You know, when we try to picture the future of transportation, we all kind of we default to the exact same sci-fi fantasy that we grew up with.
Oh, yeah.
Like you picture those sleek flying cars weaving between glass skyscrapers, right? Or we imagine like maglev trains shooting through vacuum tubes, or maybe some hyper-advanced drone just hovering down to pick you up right from your balcony.
Right, right. It is a very comforting vision, I think, mostly because it relies on this myth of the magic vehicle.
A magic vehicle.
Yeah, it gives us this illusion that a single brilliant piece of engineering is just going to wave a magic wand and instantly solve gridlock, erase pollution, and make our commutes completely effortless.
Okay, let's unpack this because reality is actually far more radical than flying cars.
It really is.
If we want to understand where we're actually going, we have to completely dismantle that magic vehicle myth. I mean, looking for one miraculous piece of hardware means we are looking in completely the wrong direction, right?
Exactly. The future isn't about the object at all. It's entirely about the network.
Right. And the central premise in the research we are looking at today for this deep dive, it introduces a concept called Mobility 5.0.
Which is fascinating, by the way. I'm so glad we're getting into these architectural and energy flow studies today.
Me too. Because to grasp Mobility 5.0, you really have to look at how we have historically built our world. Like, we have always kept the spaces where we live, the systems that produce our energy, and the ways we move in completely separate watertight compartments.
Right, they never talk to each other.
Right. But Mobility 5.0 is this radical shift where those three things fuse into a single operational entity.
And to understand why that fusion is so incredibly necessary, we really have to take a brutal look at our current reality. I mean, we are living in the crumbling legacy of the 20th century model.
Yeah, the hangover of Fordism.
Yes, exactly. And for anyone who hasn't dug into urban history, Fordism wasn't just about Henry Ford inventing the assembly line for cars. It actually became this entire philosophy for organizing society based on extreme specialization. We built a world that is sliced up into highly specialized, totally isolated pieces.
Right.
You had a house, and its only job was to consume energy so you could sleep and eat. You had a power plant 50 miles away, and its only job was to burn coal to produce that energy.
And you had a car designed exclusively to move you between the house and your workplace. One object, one singular function.
Exactly. But the systemic waste of that model today is just staggering.
It really is. There is a metric in the source material that illustrates this so perfectly. It says that private cars sit parked and completely unused 90 to 95% of the time.
Which is just wild when you think about it.
95%.
And think about the physical consequences of that in the spaces around you.
Yeah.
I mean, cities are forced to carve out enormous dead expanses of asphalt just to store these dormant metal boxes.
Yeah.
Those parking lots do nothing but absorb heat, create runoff issues, and they offer absolutely zero services to the community.
I was actually thinking about it like this. Imagine you run a business, right?
Yeah.
And you hire this incredibly highly qualified, very expensive employee.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You pay them an absolute fortune. But they work for 30 minutes in the morning, they work for 30 minutes in the evening, and for the remaining 23 hours of the day, you pay them to just stand there and stare at a blank wall.
Right. No business would ever survive that level of systemic inefficiency.
No, they'd be bankrupt in a week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yet that is exactly how we treat our trillion-dollar transportation infrastructure. Which brings up a really critical mechanism in the research referred to as the EV trap.
The EV trap.
Because when we talk about sustainability today, the knee-jerk reaction is just, simple decarbonization. People assume if you take out the internal combustion engine and drop in a battery, boom, the problem is solved.
Right. You eliminate the tailpipe emissions, so you've saved the world.
Right. But the EV trap highlights why that thinking is just dangerously incomplete. Because simply swapping a gas engine for a battery does not fix the core architectural issue of our cities.
No, it doesn't change the footprint.
Exactly. An ultra-efficient, zero-emission EV that is stuck in 2 hours of gridlock, well, it occupies the exact same physical footprint as a gas-guzzling truck.
Yeah.
It requires the exact same massive overpasses, the same underground tunnels, and all those same sprawling parking garages.
And building all that infrastructure requires millions of tons of concrete and steel. And the industrial processes to manufacture cement and forge that steel, I mean, they generate massive amounts of CO2.
Huge amounts.
So you might not have emissions coming out of the car itself, but the structural emissions required to support a city of single-occupancy vehicles are still suffocating the planet.
Which is why true sustainability under Mobility 5.0 requires allocation.
Mm-hmm.
It's about using the right tool in the right space at the exact right time.
Right.
We have to eliminate the employee staring at the wall by introducing simultaneous multifunctionality.
Oh, wait, let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because for my whole life, and for generations really, the private car has literally meant emancipation. You turn the key, and you can go anywhere on your own schedule.
The open road.
Exactly. That is deeply ingrained in us. So doesn't this highly orchestrated, hyper-efficient system risk killing that individual liberty?
Well, the research actually tackles that psychological barrier head on.
Yeah.
It asks us to look honestly at what that freedom actually looks like today.
Okay, fair enough.
Because in saturated modern cities, ownership has actually become a prison.
Yeah.
You are tied to the stress of traffic, the endless circling the block looking for parking, the insurance premiums, the maintenance.
Yeah, it really stops feeling like freedom when you spend 40 minutes just trying to leave your own neighborhood.
Right. So Mobility 5.0 redefines freedom as having multiple fluid options. It decouples the utility of moving from the physical ownership of the object. So if you need to travel 2 kilometers in a dense city center, the option with the least friction is a bicycle. For 100 kilometers, it is a high-frequency train.
Hmm?
For hauling equipment to a job site, you seamlessly book a shared van.
You don't use a sledgehammer for every single nail.
Precisely. So the system adapts to the need, rather than forcing one heavy vehicle to do everything.
And the sources detail some extreme examples of this adaptation where physical mobility for certain tasks is completely zeroed out.
Oh, the urban logistics stuff.
Yeah, consider urban logistics. Right now, moving medical supplies or donor organs involves ambulances fighting through ground traffic with sirens blaring.
Yeah, it's incredibly inefficient and dangerous.
But in the new model, autonomous drones fly those critical supplies directly between hospital rooftops.
Which skips the ground gridlock entirely.
Exactly. But how does that logic scale to heavy logistics? Because a drone obviously can't carry a massive industrial component.
Well, that is where logistics via data comes in. Historically, if you needed a specialized heavy part, a factory manufactured it, put it on a diesel truck, and drove it across 3 international borders. But under Mobility 5.0, you transfer a data packet via fiber optics and just 3D print the object on site.
Oh, wow. So the human need is met perfectly, but the physical movement of mass is completely replaced by the digital movement of information.
Exactly.
That completely reshapes supply chain economics. You don't need massive warehouses or fleets of long-haul trucks tearing up the asphalt.
Right. It's a total paradigm shift.
But let's look at how this changes our daily lives. Because once we stop obsessing over the car as this isolated metal box, the physical boundaries between our vehicles and our homes actually start to collapse.
Yes, this is where we enter the smart living ecosystem. We stop seeing the vehicle as just a transit pod, and it functionally becomes an extension of the house itself.
And the sources dive deep into a real-world case study for this called the Biagio model.
The Biagio model is brilliant.
Yeah, they took a historic building, they retrofitted it with next-generation systems, and they paired it with a custom-designed van.
And the crucial mechanism here is V2G, or vehicle-to-grid infrastructure, which is managed by a localized artificial intelligence.
Right.
In the setup, the van isn't just a battery waiting passively to be charged. The software in the house treats the van's massive, like 100-plus kilowatt-hour battery as its own energy lung.
An energy lung.
Yeah.
So by day, when the house's solar panels are generating excess power and the van is just sitting in the driveway, the house pushes that free energy into the vehicle.
Exactly.
But by night, when you get home, turn on the lights and crank the heat, the house completely stops drawing from the expensive centralized national grid. Instead, it reverses the flow and drains power right out of the van and the garage.
It creates this perfectly balanced, localized microeconomy of energy.
But hold on. If my house is draining my van's battery all night to keep the lights on and run the dishwasher, aren't I going to wake up the next morning, get in the van for my commute, and find myself stranded with a completely dead battery?
Well, what's fascinating here is the predictive AI layer that governs this whole exchange. The algorithm isn't just blindly pulling power. It is synced with your personal calendar, it analyzes your historical travel data, and it pulls in real-time weather forecasts.
So it actually anticipates the future state of the home and your life.
Exactly. If the AI knows you have a 40-kilometer drive scheduled for 8 a.m. tomorrow, it sets an impassable limit, say a 30% charge.
Okay, that makes sense.
The house can draw energy from the van to run the dishwasher, sure, but the second the battery hits that 30% threshold, the system physically locks it out. That energy is strictly reserved for your mobility.
Wow. And the Biagio study actually takes this integration a step further with a concept they call volumetric expansion.
Yes, the extra room concept.
Yeah. The van isn't just an energy lung. It is physical, usable space. It has high-speed connectivity, climate control, and comfortable seating. While it is plugged into the house, it acts as an isolated, quiet office for smart working. You literally gain an extra room.
And when it is time to leave, the psychology of the commute fundamentally changes.
How so?
Travel goes from being a stressful interruption, black hole of time and traffic, to a fluid continuation of your living environment. You take your climate, your data, and your comfort right with you.
I mean, I love the Biagio model for a single household, but how in the world do you scale this? Transitioning an entire nation to this model seems like it would bankrupt a state with massive infrastructure costs.
Well, the answer lies in transitioning to the connected cells model. We have to abandon the rigid 20th century urban layout.
Which was what, exactly?
For decades, urban planners built hyperdense, service-rich city centers surrounded by sprawling, empty dormitory peripheries.
Which is the root cause of mass commuting in the first place. You build residential zones with no jobs and commercial zones with no homes.
Right.
So you're forcing everyone to leave the periphery at dawn, jam the highways to get to the center, and then do the exact reverse at dusk.
The connected cells model completely breaks that cycle. Smaller areas like, say, a mountain village of 1,000 people, or a specific industrial district, they become intelligent, self-sustaining nodes or cells.
So they aren't just dormitories anymore.
Exactly. They produce their own local solar or hydro energy. They manage their own data. They trade their surplus energy to the broader grid for credits.
They don't need a massive international airport or a high-speed rail hub in every single town just to be competitive.
No, they rely on interdependence. They only lean on the big city hubs when absolutely necessary.
But when you do need to travel between these cells, we hit the classic problem of intermodal transit.
Right, the friction.
Yeah, because traditional intermodality usually involves a lot of friction. You park your car miles away, run through a station, sweating with heavy luggage, and just pray the bus isn't late. How do we fix that without spending billions on new construction?
The sources propose a really elegant logistical solution for this called the rolling highway, or the autostrada viaggiante.
Okay, how does that work?
The strategy involves taking existing rail networks and turning them into mobile highways for private vehicles.
Right.
You basically drive your private electric vehicle directly onto a continuous low-floor train wagon.
See, I am just picturing taking a car ferry in the middle of August.
Oh, no.
Waiting in endless, scorching lines, inching forward, trying to navigate tight ramps without scratching the paint. That sounds like an absolute nightmare to do on a daily commute.
Oh, I totally agree. If it relied on human drivers navigating narrow ramps, it would fail instantly. But the rolling highway uses optical sensors and autonomous parking technology.
Oh, so the car does it itself.
Exactly. You pull up to the loading zone, and the cars automatically file into a single line, perfectly spacing themselves on the train. And crucially, they don't need to build massive new concrete stations for this.
They don't.
No, they repurpose old, underutilized freight yards and just install automated loading ramps.
So you roll on, and while the high-voltage train covers hundreds of miles at top speed, your EV is physically plugged in and charging.
Yeah.
You can sleep in your car, you can use it as your mobile office, or you can step out and grab a coffee in the passenger car. You get zero highway stress, zero tire wear, and you arrive fully charged.
Exactly. It leverages the railway corridors we already have, but applies a Mobility 5.0 logic to them. But orchestrating this really complex dance of trains, smart vans, and micro power grids requires a revolutionary approach to data.
Here's where it gets really interesting. To manage all this, the sources introduce the digital twin. Now, it is easy to assume a digital twin is just a fancy 3D video game rendering that architects use to make a city look pretty in a PowerPoint presentation.
Right, like a glowing hologram or something.
Exactly.
But it's not that at all. It is a massive, incredibly powerful simulation engine. It processes terabytes of data from traffic cameras, cell phones, and connected vehicles to model the exact heartbeat of a city.
And its primary purpose is to avoid building new things.
Yes. Contrast that with the brute force urban planning of the past.
Yeah.
In the 20th century, if there was traffic, the default solution was just to pour concrete and add 2 more lanes.
But that just triggers induced demand. When you build more lanes, driving becomes temporarily easier, which attracts more cars, and 5 years later, you have an even wider traffic jam.
Exactly. The digital twin prevents that cycle by optimizing what already exists. It simulates millions of scenarios in a virtual environment before a single shovel hits the dirt.
Wow.
The simulation can map out what happens if a city shifts just 10% of local freight to electric cargo bikes, for example.
Or I think one example they gave, it calculates the impact if 3 major local companies agree to stagger their employees' morning start times by just 15 minutes.
Yes, just a 15-minute shift alters the entire flow of the grid.
That's wild.
These small, data-driven tweaks, like adjusting the timing of smart crosswalks or utilizing the algorithms on those Biagio home controllers or just staggering shifts, they achieve the exact same traffic fluidity as building a brand new overpass.
But for a tenth of the cost, and with absolutely zero pollution.
Exactly.
That leads us to the final major paradigm shift in these sources, which is how we actually measure success. They call it the new human metric.
Right, because in the 20th century, the metric for success was the stopwatch and the machine. How much horsepower does an engine have? How many cars can we push through this intersection per hour?
It was all about mechanical performance. But in Mobility 5.0, the metric is entirely human. It measures the actual lifetime return to you. It literally measures the reduction of cortisol, your stress hormone levels during your travel.
It also measures inclusivity. A system is only considered successful if an isolated elderly person in that small mountain cell can navigate it as easily and seamlessly as a 30-year-old finance manager in the city center.
So what does this all mean? We started by dismantling the myth of the magic flying car, and what we found is a staggeringly complex shift from isolated metal boxes to interconnected living ecosystems.
We're moving from a world of fragmentation to a world of absolute convergence.
As we wrap up this deep dive, the sources leave us with a profound, almost unresolved socio-architectural question.
It's a big one.
Yeah. If vehicles literally become mobile rooms that plug into our homes, and if the rigid lines between traveling, living, and working completely dissolve, how is this going to change our human psychology and our sense of belonging?
It really presents two very divergent possibilities for the future of community.
What's the first one?
On one hand, we could become a society of hyper-connected nomads. If your van is your office and your bedroom and it effortlessly loads onto a train, you could unhook your living module, sleep on a rail line, and wake up in a new city every single week without ever breaking your daily routine.
But on the other hand, there is a paradoxical possibility. If the connected cells model works and small towns become intelligently self-sufficient, producing their own power and 3D printing their own goods, the sheer necessity to commute into a massive metropolis might just go extinct.
Which could return us to fiercely loyal, highly localized communities. You stay put, not because you are trapped, but because everything you need is perfectly balanced right where you are.
It is a fascinating choice to mull over. Will you be a fluid nomad drifting through the network, or a deeply rooted local citizen in a self-sustaining cell? It completely shatters that old image of everyone zooming around in personal flying cars.
It really does.
It turns out the future isn't about escaping gravity. It is about fundamentally redesigning the ground we live on. We hope this deep dive gave you some incredible new perspectives to explore today. Until next time, keep questioning the world around you.